Good evening. My name is Barkha Dutt, and you are live with the Mojo Story, our independent digital platform. As we keep our eye on the farmers' protests, and remember, we have been consistently reporting from on the ground, and you'll be seeing a series of ground reports, voices, and images of those protests on this channel. What has happened is that even as those protests continue unabated, we are seeing farmers digging their heels in, even as the government tries to bring them to the negotiating table. But there is now another twist in the tale, and that tale has come from Canada. Canadian leader, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has waded into these protests and said that he supports the right of farmers to a peaceful protest. India has hit back, calling these comments ill-informed, unwarranted, and an interference in India's internal matter. We'll be looking at the repercussions of this comment. We're seeing pushback, of course, from supporters of the government, people like Ram Madhav asking, what is Trudeau's locus standi? Isn't it tantamount to interference? The MEA officially making the point that these comments are unwarranted and ill-informed. But the question remains, what does this do? Does this increase the pressure on the government, or will it only consolidate hardliners? Also, what is the definition of internal in an increasingly globalized world? You can see our panel on the screen with you, but before we introduce each one of them one by one, what I want to start by doing is actually playing out exactly what Justin Trudeau had to say.
I would be remiss if I didn't start also by recognizing the news coming out of India about the protest by farmers. The situation is concerning, and we're all very worried about family and friends. I know that's the reality for many of you. Let me remind you, Canada will always be there to defend the right of peaceful protest. We believe in the importance of dialogue, and that's why we've reached out through multiple means directly to the Indian authorities to highlight our concerns. This is a moment for all of us to pull together.
So Trudeau there making the point that Canada stands with the right of peaceful protest by farmers, India reacting sharply. Let me quickly introduce our panel now. We have Abhimanyu Kohar. Abhimanyu Kohar is with the Rashtriya Kisan Singh, and in fact, he is among the groups that is negotiating with the government. So we'll hear Abhimanyu and the farmers' perspective on the ground in a moment from now. We have Singh, a veteran diplomat and an outspoken voice on current affairs, and we have Sushant Sareen, strategic affairs analyst and senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. अभिमन्यु जी, आपसे शुरू करती हूँ. मुझे मालूम है कि जो सिचुएशन है वो बहुत एक क्रिटिकल पॉइंट पर है और बातचीत शुरू हुई है, लेकिन अभी तक उसमें कोई ब्रेक थ्रू नहीं हुआ. लेकिन बाहर से जब दखल अंदाज आता है तो आप इसको किस रूप से देखते हैं? क्योंकि कनाडा की जब बात करें तो बहुत से जो किसान हैं, उनके रिश्तेदार, उनकी फैमिलीज भी कनाडा में रहते हैं. कनाडा शायद या फार्मर शायद इसको दखल अंदाज के रूप में ना देखें, लेकिन सरकार ने उसको इस रूप में देखा है. तो आप क्या बोलेंगे अभिमन्यु जी?
देखिए, हमारा ये साफ कहना है कि जो ये किसान आंदोलन चल रहा है, ये हमारे देश का आंतरिक मामला है, इंटरनल मैटर है, और हम किसी भी तरह का बाहरी हस्तक्षेप नहीं चाहते हैं, और हम किसी भी तरह के बाहरी हस्तक्षेप के खिलाफ हैं. और जो ये कनाडा के पीएम का जो स्टेटमेंट आया है, वो अपनी डोमेस्टिक पॉलिटिक्स को देखते हुए ये कर रहे हैं. हमारा ये साफ कहना है कि जो ये आंदोलन है, ये भारत के करोड़ों किसानों का आंदोलन है, और भारत के करोड़ों जो किसान हैं, उनमें इतना सामर्थ्य है कि वो अपने दम पर अपने सभी मुद्दों का समाधान करा सकते हैं. हमारा केंद्र सरकार के साथ डायलॉग चल रहा है, और हम गवर्नमेंट के साथ डायलॉग कर रहे हैं, और उसके पैरेलल में हमारा पीसफुल प्रोटेस्ट भी चलता रहेगा. और हम ये बिल्कुल साफ कर देना चाहते हैं कि किसान समाज जो हमारे देश का है, उसको सभी वर्गों का
कनेक्टिविटी इज नॉट ग्रेट विद अभिमन्यु, लेकिन आपने ये पॉइंट किया कि ये इंटरनल मैटर. बोलिए, आप वापस आ गए हैं, बोलिए. बोलिए.
देखिए, ये मैं साफ कर देना चाहता हूं, जैसा मैंने पहले कहा कि ये इंटरनल मैटर है, और जो इस तरह का जो आउटसाइड इंटरफेरेंस हो रहा है, ये गलत है. हमारा जो इंटरनल मैटर है, वो हम सरकार के साथ बातचीत करके उसको मुद्दे को सुलझाएंगे, और हमारे संविधान ने शांतिपूर्ण तरीके से आंदोलन करने का हर भारतीय को अधिकार दिया है. और जो ये केंद्र सरकार ने जो 3 कृषि कानून जारी किए हैं जो किसानों के लिए एक तरीके से डेथ वारंट है, तो इनके खिलाफ
जी। Okay, Abhimanyu is obviously not in a great connectivity area, but I do think that the points that he's making are very important. He's saying farmers are capable of fighting their own battle. He stands by the fact,
हेलो
Sushant, that he believes that these farm laws are a death warrant. जी Abhimanyu, we keep losing you. आप बीच-बीच में आपकी आवाज
या
चली जाती है.
या
आप जल्दी से अपना पॉइंट कर लीजिए, फिर हम बातचीत आगे करेंगे. बोलिए, बोलिए.
जी, तो हमारा ये साफ कहना है कि जो हमारी डिमांड्स हम केंद्र सरकार को भी ये कहना चाहते हैं कि हमारी डिमांड्स जब
जी.
तक पूरी नहीं होंगी, ये पीसफुल मूवमेंट चलता रहेगा और हमारी
Okay, I'm going to have to come in there, sir. आपका सिग्नल बहुत ही वीक है. I know you're at this moment in one of those famed Delhi government buildings जहाँ पे बातचीत जारी है और हमको बिल्कुल आपकी बात समझ नहीं आ रही है, लेकिन आपकी जो ऑपरेटिव बात है वो हमें समझ आ गई है कि ये एक अंदरूनी मामला है. आप अंत में कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे अभिमन्यु बिफोर आई टेक द डिस्कशन टू एम्बेसडर केसी सिंह एंड सुशांत सरीन? बोलिए सर.
मैं अंत में यही कहना चाहूंगा लास्ट में. मैं क्षमा भी चाहूंगा कि नेटवर्क प्रॉब्लम है, लेकिन अभी हम मीटिंग में हैं. तो हमारा ये साफ कहना है कि हम इन जो हमारी डिमांड्स हैं जब तक वो पूरी नहीं होंगी तब तक हमारा पीसफुल मूवमेंट चलता रहेगा और हमें किसी भी तरह का आउटसाइड इंटरफेरेंस बर्दाश्त नहीं है. ये हमारे देश का इंटरनल मामला है और हमें केंद्र सरकार के साथ डायलॉग और पीसफुल मूवमेंट के जरिए इसका समाधान करेंगे.
और ट्रूडो के कमेंट्स को आप नहीं वेलकम करते? यू डोंट थिंक इट्स एनी ऑफ हिज बिजनेस? अभिमन्यु,
देखिए, हमारा ये साफ कहना है कि ये हमारा इंटरनल मैटर है और हमें किसी भी तरह का आउटसाइड इंटरफेरेंस स्वीकार नहीं.
Okay, thank you, Abhimanyu. We're going to let you actually go back to those talks that you're trying to conduct with the government, talks that have made no breakthrough right now. The farmers groups are continuing to insist that the new farm laws must be held in abeyance. You heard Abhimanyu Kohar calling them actually a death warrant, and he is standing behind that comment of his. Let me now take the conversation to Sushant and Ambassador KC Singh. Sushant, I'll start with you. In this particular case, the farmers group or the farmers leader we had said this is our internal matter. We're capable of resolving this on our own. We have not resolved it. We continue our peaceful protest, but it is none of Trudeau's business. But there are many of the farmers on the ground with families, with extended families, with relatives in Canada. Do you blame Trudeau for jumping in? Obviously, he's got one eye on his domestic politics, but isn't that what every country does?
Look, Barkha, yes, I blame him, and he has no business to speak on any of India's internal matters. The days of the white man hectoring to the brown man, trying to teach us democracy, trying to teach us rule of law, I think those days are long behind us. And we don't need Mr. Trudeau and his patronizing tone to tell us how to run our own country. Number one. Number two, yes, there is an issue. I think that the farm laws have been discussed to death. This is not a new discussion. This has been a discussion which has been going on in this country for decades now. And yes, I can understand people being for these reforms, people being against these reforms. That is part of democracy. And the farmers are not aliens, unlike those Canadians or the so-called Canadian Indians, people who have, placed their faith in India with their feet, gone to the cooler climes in Canada and are trying to tell us how to run our own country. They have no locus standi in this country. If they are so bothered about their relatives, they should call them back to Canada. But they have no business to tell us how to run our own country. And Justin Trudeau even less. He made a fool of himself the last time he came to India by doing all that tamasha which he did. And frankly, how many of these people in Canada, including those damn ministers of the Canadians, who are most of them are Khalistanis, how many of them have actually read these laws? How many of them know how the farm economy in India works or does not work? What are the problems? What are the structural problems which are coming into, how the farm economies have been working? What are the things, what are the reforms which have been brought about? How many of them have actually read the law? This was the same problem with CAA. Nobody, and I can assure you, nobody who was waxing eloquent on CAA had even bothered to read that one-page law. And yet people were, talking about it as though some kind of grave injustice had been committed, even though in their own country, similar laws had been passed. Now, will the Canadians have similar anti-diluvian laws when it comes to the farm economy in
Okay.
Canada? Will they have these kind
Now,
of laws?
are we not mixing up the debate here, Sushant?
Problem, but their problem is between them and the government and the politics of this country to sort out. If the farmers are totally against it, and not all farmers are agitating, there are farmers in small pockets which were kind of used to the kind of this kind of state which was constantly patronizing them, the kind of subsidies they were getting. Okay, so there is a transition going to take place. They are they have apprehensions on how that transition is going to work. There are some monopolies which are going to be broken, but that is our internal matter. Should we now start talking about how Canada should run its own affairs? And that is the moot point. What business does Justin Trudeau have to talk about? And just one more point, Barkha. Look, we all believe that everybody has a right to protest. Everybody has a right to protest peacefully. I don't think the government of India is saying that nobody has the right to protest. Number one. Number two, nobody has the right to, while protesting, to inconvenience other people. If they are blocking the national capital, how is that justified? And if the government is trying to clear the national capital and make sure that the entry and exit from the national capital is not being obstructed by these people, I don't see how anybody can quibble about
okay,
it.
Before I need to get Casey, but I need to ask you one question. You made a comment, you made a broadside remark about Khalistan. I was among those who interviewed Deep Sidhu without knowing who he is, and I got into a raging row with him over Khalistan. I told him that I thought he discredited the brave men and women who were on this, discredited the cause that he was actually espousing. But it's not fair to say that everybody out on the streets is some sort of anti-national. Today, I spent the day at the farmers' protest, Sushant. I met so many old Sikhs from Punjab whose sons are serving in the military. Not that that should be the criteria or the only criteria to measure their patriotism. So when you bring in Khalistan into broad stroking the entire farmers movement, aren't you being grossly unfair to them? Just quickly, and then I want to go to Ambassador Casey Singh. Sushant?
Sorry, Barkha, there was some disturbance. Can you please repeat?
I'm just saying your broadside about Khalistan, is that fair? And I say that as someone who got into a raging row with Deep Sidhu over his comments. I'm the one who interviewed him, got into that fight. But I also met a number of people whose sons are serving in the Indian military who are proud patriots.
Barkha, the problem in this country is anybody who speaks English with a clipped accent is supposed to be an intellectual. And that is why you went to Deep Sidhu. The man doesn't know his backside from his front. When he was talking about these issues, he's talking about a revolution coming. Does he know what a revolution is? Does he know how lives are destroyed in a revolution? Does he know the devastation which happens in a revolution? But it's become fashionable. It's become sexy to talk about revolution. It gives him a sense of, machismo in him. So I don't want to talk about a character like him. But let's face facts. And it's certainly not my case that the farmers who are agitating are doing it because of separatism or a Khalistani. Certainly not my case. And I don't subscribe to anybody who attributes those kind of motives to them. It's an economic issue. It's a political issue. But the people in Canada, most of these ministers, for example, of Justin Trudeau, that other fellow from that Liberal Party or whatever that party is, who are these people? Don't you know their antecedents? Don't you know the kind of flirtation they have done with the Khalistanis? Don't you know how they go and how the Pakistanis patronize them? How they are trying to run this referendum 2020 and all the other stuff which they've done in the Gurdwaras out there? For Justin Trudeau to interact and to espouse the cause of, or in an oblique manner, defend the cause of those people because they are agitating out there. I don't think it's fair. What business that failed cricketer from England, Monty Panesar, have to talk about what's happening in India? Is he an Indian? Does he have any stakes in India?
Okay. Let's just get you've made a very passionate and angry point. Let's get a counter view also, because there are counter views, and I think Ambassador Casey Singh has raised a question as a veteran diplomat. What is internal? What qualifies as internal? Casey, if you were a serving diplomat today who had to respond to Canada, if you were, for example, managing the MEA's response, would it have been similar to the one that we have seen so far, which is called the remarks ill-warranted and ill-informed, unwarranted and ill-informed? I beg your pardon. Casey, go ahead.
Well, I think that language is not proper because ill-informed means what? He simply said people should have a right to protest. And the government and the commissioner of police in Delhi did not give them permission to protest in Delhi. So what is ill-informed about that? Ill-informed is the larger context. I think let's separate the issues. One is the issue of what is the role of the diaspora. Is diaspora, which is having passports there, aliens who should have nothing to do with India? Then in which case, what was Mr. Modi doing for the last 6 years? He's been gathering diaspora, mostly citizens of those countries, and using that platform to hector Indian opposition, level charges of corruption, play domestic politics using the diaspora, which doesn't even have a vote in India. So did he expect that they will tell their relatives in India? Are we expecting that diaspora to have an opinion which will filter back to India? If that was the expectation, then how can we fault Trudeau from saying that these people are concerned about what is happening in India? That's all that he has basically said. Now, of course, he chose the wrong occasion. I fault him there. It should not have been the Gurpurab, because that will automatically make it, then for those who want to paint it as a Khalistan issue, which many people from the beginning have been trying to do with this agitation, because very simply, the vanguard of the movement started in Punjab. Haryana, because there's a BJP government there, picked up all the leaders of the farmers. I drove down 5 days back from Chandigarh, and you could see police bandobast before all the mandis, in Shabad, in Pipli. So police had surrounded the normal places where Haryana farmers would gather. And you need a basic group from which an agitation then moves forward. So Khattar was able to disrupt it. Then he started a quarrel with the Punjab Chief Minister to make it a Punjab-Haryana issue. It is not a Khalistan issue. It is not a Punjab-Haryana issue. It is a farmers' issue, and which is what became very clear when the Khab Panchayats of Haryana jumped on board yesterday, a bit belatedly, but now you find the infusion of Haryanvis coming in. You find UP farmers coming in. I could see Kakaji, a great farm leader of Madhya Pradesh, in the delegation that was talking. So therefore, the government tried very much to first limit it to one state, limit it to one community, make it an interstate. It's just not work, because that is not what it is. And therefore, it must be addressed for what it is. Now, the second issue is, if we are that, take Trudeau in June, when you had the Black Lives Matter in America, he suddenly showed up at a Black Lives Matter demonstration in Ottawa in June, and he took a knee for 10 minutes. Now, we didn't have the Americans go ballistic over it. Now, if we are a democracy and we think we have the rights here, why do we get so sensitive on these things? Tomorrow, you'll have a Biden administration say the same thing. So will you fight with the whole world? I think we also need to look inwards. We need to be more sensitive to the rights of the people here. Yes, we should have told Trudeau, Mr. Trudeau, you don't know all the facts. You don't call him ill-informed. The head of state of another country should not be called ill-informed. And that is how we dealt with him when he came on his visit here. We didn't try to woo him. If we think the Khalistanis possess his soul, then why don't you try repossessing his soul? And the only way to do that is to engage him, is to turn him against those Khalistanis you say he is sponsoring. No, instead
can I ask you something? Can I ask you something?
Failure.
Yeah. Okay, just complete your sentence and then I'll ask you. I'll complete your sentence and I'll ask you a counter question. Yeah.
It's a diplomatic failure if you're not able to deal with the Canadian Prime Minister and you just give him up as lost cause, whose soul has been taken over by some fictional Khalistanis, then I think really you are throwing in the towel. That is not the way diplomacy in politics is conducted. I would call it a gross failure on your part.
Here's what I want you to comment about, because I saw it in your tweet, and then I can get Sushant to respond to it. You basically are arguing that in some ways India can no longer classify Trudeau's comments as interference, because India did that by taking a side, kind of, in the Howdy Modi event. And you've been talking about the Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar moment and kind of arguing that we've lost our consistency on this point. So I just want you to make that point and I'll get Sushant to respond to it.
No, absolutely correct. I objected to that in real time because, we can say he didn't say Trump, but he waited for the crowd to say that. Now, very clearly, he was backing him in September. Then we invited Trump in an election year, which you don't do. It's going to be a very friction-causing election in America. You invite him in February. So within 4 months, he's here, and then you do a similar rally in Ahmedabad. Now, if you are holding hands with one of the leaders who's been a very divisive leader in US, and globally, and the Democrats are at the receiving end, shouldn't the Democrats be objecting? How can we take exception to the Democrats not saying, what was your Prime Minister doing holding hands with President Trump? They may be thinking that, but they didn't. We didn't have their spokesman go out and say, Mr. Modi is ill-informed and ill-advised.
So what would you before I get Sushant to respond, what would you have the government do? Say it's okay, we welcome your comments? What would you have them do?
No, not at all. Barkha, I said, you should have said, Prime Minister, we are dealing with it. Please keep out of it. You don't know all the facts. You don't call him ill-informed. That's not a word you use. I'm surprised the kind of spokesman we have in the ministry today, or that is written and given to them. And we had earlier the External Affairs Minister. You know how he dealt with a congressional delegation, and now he'll be eating, he'll be basically having to face them, because the consequences of ill-chosen words once used cannot be taken back. That's where diplomats are taught how to convey things. And here also, I think what was hidden in his Indian, just let me complete, what was hidden in the Indian message was that obviously Indian government had privately spoken to the Canadians. That comes out in the statement, but because his remarks were so sharp, it's got hidden in that what's been discussed privately should not be made public. I absolutely agree. He had no business to do it on Guru Purab. It's a religious occasion, and he shouldn't be using it to make political points. It's a foolish thing on his part to do, but that's Trudeau for you.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, so let's focus very sharply on this. So, Sushant, Ambassador K.C. Singh believes that Trudeau may have chosen the wrong day, that India could have concerns about Trudeau playing to extremist elements within the Sikh community in Canada. Obviously, he's playing to domestic politics, but so was Prime Minister Modi when he made the Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar kind of comments from the Howdy Modi stage. And who all are you going to pick fights with? Tomorrow, if Biden, for example, makes a comment on the NRC and the citizenship legislations, which he did do in his campaign, are you going to keep picking these quarrels? It's a kind of diplomatic failure. You've got to be smarter, more strategic about this.
No, okay. Yes, you need to be smarter and more strategic about it. You need to start preempting certain trends which are quite visible. And you need to have an outreach to nip that in the bud. So, for example, what Biden, the kind of policy papers which were churned out by the Biden campaign, they were ill-informed. They didn't know what they were talking about, the CAA. When the Americans passed similar laws in their country to give a fast-track citizenship to a particular religious denomination, that's okay. But if India does it, then, heavens are going to fall. Ambassador K.C. Singh gives a free pass to Trudeau. Oh, but that's just Trudeau. Well, that's just India. India is going to respond in the way India feels it needs to respond when you have the Prime Minister of a country making gratuitous remarks about India and trying to hector us and trying to tell us what we should or should not be doing. And we don't need lessons from him. Number 3, I think this Howdy Modi event has been done to death. And frankly, no amount of clarification seems to satisfy people who are not willing to be satisfied. The fact of the matter remains, if you hear the text of what Prime Minister Modi said, he very clearly said, candidate Trump in the last election, and was using the same slogan which I used. And that is what he was saying. Now, for somebody who thinks that he was trying to endorse Mr. Trump for this election, you can stretch it to whatever level you want to, but I don't think that's a fair thing to do. But people will do what people will do.
But I have sorry.
On the Ahmedabad event, that's the kind of public diplomacy which has started being done.
Not the Ahmedabad event, the Howdy Modi event in the US, when Mr. Modi went to the US, Sushant, not the Ahmedabad event. Just clarifying, not the Ahmedabad event. Sorry, Barkha? I'm saying not the Ahmedabad event, but the event that the Prime Minister stood with Trump in the US.
There's a lot of disturbance which is coming at my end, so I kind of lose you in between.
All right. I'm just trying to say, Sushant, that the event was not in Ahmedabad. The event being referenced is the one that took place in the United States of America. There's also another question I'll add.
The Modi and the Ahmedabad events were 2 different events. And in the Howdy Modi event, the Prime Minister very clearly mentioned candidate Trump's slogan, right? And that was the connection he was drawing between Trump and his own campaign. And that, you were trying to make some kind of connection with the guy. elections will keep happening in America, elections will keep happening in India. What the Prime Minister was trying to do is to take the relationship forward with the man of the moment. If it had not been Trump, when it was Barack Obama,
Okay.
the still indulged in those beer hugs and whatever else he did. But that was his
Okay.
style of diplomacy. For somebody today,
I-
Amresh, to say, and one more point, frankly speaking, again, Pramila Jayapal, has she read the law? Barkha, I can tell you, everybody who's commented on the CAA has not read the law. Everybody who has commented on the NRC does not know what the NRC is, what the exact position of the NRC is, how the NRC came about. They don't know it. They read ill-informed analysis in India and give misinformed opinion of their own and hector India.
Okay, I've got to come in. I've got 5 minutes left on the show, and I do have to get Casey to respond. I have just one quick question that stood out on our live stream. Arun Mal says, when the Hong Kong police fired tear gas on peaceful protesters, all world leaders spoke out. Why is the farmer protest any different?
Barkha, again, I lost you. There's just too
The
much
comment.
disturbance.
I don't know what's happened today, but the question is about the Hong Kong protests and how the world commented on it. And if the world commented on the Hong Kong protests, why would the farmer protest be any different? Are you able to hear me, Sushant? You're not able to hear me. Okay, I'll try and come back to you. Casey, do you want to come in on what Sushant has said so far? Go ahead.
Look, I don't want to get into tutu meh with him, with either BJP or core supporters of BJP. They see nothing wrong. What did the crowd shout back? Okay, we are stupid. We misunderstand Mr. Modi. When he said "Ab ki baar," what did those 80,000 people shout back? Were they also stupid? They said Trump Sarkar. No, they knew this is whistling and dog whistles and signals. Prime Minister is, of course, expert at that. Now we can disown it and say, no, he didn't mean it. Well, don't try convincing us. Try convincing the people who were the victims of this, the Democrats. So what they have in their heart, we'll know when the government comes in. Now, at the same time, I didn't give Trudeau a clean pass. I said he was stupid to do it at a Guru Purab. But I simply said that is the way he is. Take it or leave it. Declare war, yaar. Send your aircraft carrier right now into the bay and fly the planes over Ottawa. What do you want to do? Either that or you engage a man and convert him. No, it's a failure of your diplomacy. You go and do the same things to other countries. Now you take neighboring countries, CAA. What did your home minister do? Now I said in live program, I said it's going to influence your relationship with Bangladesh. A former foreign secretary and a former high commissioner contradicted me in real time. And now who's going and explaining things there? Where has the relationship gone since then? And wait till the West Bengal election comes up. Now you'll say no, but this is an internal matter of India. But when you do things which affect other countries, in this case, the diaspora is reacting. You are the one who turned diaspora into a big monster. No other. Vajpayee didn't do that. Mr. Modi did that. But you can't have a one-way street. You can't say, I'll use the diaspora. Even Manmohan Singh said that. During their time, we were using the diaspora to influence the US Congress and Senate to get the nuclear bill passed. Now, if we are using the diaspora to influence the American government, why do we get very upset when that government uses the diaspora to say things about you? No, it can't be a one-way street. These are countries of immigrants.
Okay.
And they're all basically immigrant-based countries. Europeans will not do that. Because they
I have exactly a minute left. I have exactly a minute left. I'm going to hope that Sushant can hear me, and I'm going to give both of you 30 seconds each. Sushant, the question that you couldn't hear, and I'm very much hoping that you can hear now, is from one of our viewers who asks about the Hong Kong protests and how every global leader of consequence commented on the Hong Kong protests. So why should India expect the farmer protest to be any different? That's the question. Sorry, one second. Go ahead. Yeah.
Barkha, the Hong Kong protests and comparing those with the farmer protests in India, I think that's comparing chalk and cheese, number one. Number two, the Hong Kong, what the Chinese were doing in Hong Kong were actually completely undermining or actually blowing apart the agreement which they had signed with the British, which was an international agreement. I don't think the farm law bill or the farm reforms bills which have come violate any international agreement. So I think comparing the two completely doesn't make any sense. Again, because there was this disturbance, I lost most of what Ambassador Singh was saying. But I think one thing I must talk about, his point that, we are the people who try to use the diaspora. So now if it's coming back to bite us, why are we making such a big deal out of it? Look, we want to use the diaspora and let's face it, Ambassador Singh is a far more experienced person than me, has been there, done that. Diplomacy is also about, in a manner of speaking, it's not exactly a one-way street. There are double standards in diplomacy. You try and use the diaspora to the extent that it benefits your national interest. But if the diaspora is going to tomorrow start talking about undoing India or interfering in India's internal affairs because some uncle of theirs is losing his monopoly in some place, I'm sorry, that's not going to be acceptable to India. We will use the diaspora to the extent that it is in our benefit. If it's not in our benefit, we will not use it and we will show them their place. Call it double standards. That's the way international diplomacy works. And we are not doing anything which somebody else does.
Okay, Casey, very quickly, I think there's a reasonable question there. You know that better than all of us as a diplomat, that every country acts from its own self-interest, that you sort of use things that further your interest. And in this case, you can't apply a uniform rule on the diaspora. If the diaspora's responses or domestic politics of another country don't suit your national interest, you're not going to accept it with open arms, right?
No, that's where the calibration of the thing, that's where diplomacy and calibration comes in. Which means you use the diaspora in a manner that when governments change there or governments are extra committed to certain kinds of views which you don't like, that then you insulate it. You insulate diplomacy is a way of insulating it. But in case of Mr. Modi, what has happened is he broke those barriers. He broke the old conventions of never criticizing. The opposition never criticized the government when they went abroad. Mr. Vajpayee was sent to the UN even when he was in the opposition by the Congress government. And the Prime Minister never criticized the opposition when he was abroad. Now, once you start breaking those conventions, then it's free for all. And I think that's what's happened. But I think Canada has been mishandled. And we cannot equate a problem with a small part of the community there with the Prime Minister and the government of that country. Now, if you have done that, then essentially your so-called Khalistan bogey has won. So which means you are really accepting defeat, which is not what diplomacy should be. I think it is not so. I don't think Trudeau is some kind of a Trojan horse of the Khalistanis. This is just anybody who opposes this government will become a Khalistani or a Maoist or anything. They will paint you as something else other than simply talking to you about your problems and what a government should be doing.
I'm out of time, Sushant. I'll allow both of you 15 seconds, literally concluding remarks, because I can see you wanting to say something. Sushant, go ahead.
No, I think Ambassador Singh is being a little uncharitable. Yes, you can have your differences with the government, and on many issues, yes, I would agree with what Ambassador Singh is saying. That when you criticize your opposition, when you go abroad, it's not something which any prime minister should be doing, and that point is very well taken. But to say that everybody who says anything against the government is labeled as a terrorist, that's not true. Barkha, if you're going to ignore the fact that yes, there were elements and there are elements within the current movement who are espousing the cause of Khalistan, who are unabashed about it. You did a program yourself. Who are unabashed about it. Somebody who is reluctant to call somebody like Bhindrawale a terrorist, then you know where his loyalties lie. And who calls
But that's him. That's him. That's not every farmer on the street, right? So we can't use him. We can't use him to make a comment. He's an idiot. He's an absolute idiot.
Obviously, he's an idiot. But that's not the point.
And he was campaigning for Sunny Deol.
There are people like him who have, and many others like him who have also infiltrated this for making those noises. And there are enough clips going around. You probably would have seen them. But it's certainly my case, and I made it myself very clear. There is an issue, whether it is of because of disinformation, misinformation, because political, hot potato, which one side wants to use against the other. That's an internal matter for us. That is for the government to resolve properly. Otherwise, this government will pay the price for it in the next election. That's how democracy works. If a government does something which is against the interest of the people vote it out. Isn't that what democracy is?
Okay. I'm really sorry. I have to close. Casey, I'll allow you the same 15-20 seconds quickly. Casey.
Very quickly, Barkha, we are facing these problems today because of institutional collapse. Parliament is passing bills like I tweeted the other day, railway station, New Delhi railway station. Go rushing in, nothing, voice vote, speaker goes along with it. It doesn't go to committees. Now, today they want to set up a committee. Why weren't these bills discussed in committees of Parliament? Why weren't farmers called in earlier by the government? No, everything is, they have all the wisdom. They pass everything in a second. And the president is very happy to rubber stamp it. And then when the public then starts an uproar, then you say, oh no, but the bill is passed. You debase your institutions, then the protests and the anger will go to the street level. Please, the Prime Minister has to revive the institutions, use them, take the more difficult path of taking it through the Parliament, debating there, discussing there, meeting all the objections there, and then taking it along. They don't even try creating a consensus.
Okay, I have to close. I know both of you are not going to agree, but please, Sushant, sorry, you're on mute. Just one sentence, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Barkha, okay. In principle, what Ambassador K.C. Singh is right, it needs to have been debated. It has been debated. It has been debated for decades. And you can see the parties which are opposing these reforms right now are the very same parties which were actually batting for these reforms not too long back. And the travesty is that the party which is pushing for the reforms today was the party which was opposing these reforms when the party which is opposing them was supporting these reforms.
Okay. We are going to go in circles over this. What I want to say in the end, as somebody who's been following these protests, is that actually what you think about the reform and what you think of the farm laws is less important than the fact that thousands of your men and women have been on the street for 6 days. And, basic sort of politics and humanity response that you talk to these people, that you find a way of talking to them. If you believe that this law is good for them, your political communication has to be way better and much more humane. Sorry, I'm out of time. We can go on with this. We'll bring you all back. Today, the focus was on Trudeau and his comments. Sushant, Casey, thank you, Ambassador K.C. Singh, Sushant Sareen. Thank you very much. And thank you to our viewers.